The rusted gate screeched as Kofi Mensah pushed it open, his worn sneakers kicking up red dust from the compound yard. 15 years. 15 years since he'd stood in this exact spot, and now he was back with nothing but a canvas bag and a question that had kept him awake for the last 3,000 nights: did they ever love him at all? Through the window, he could see them gathering for Sunday dinner. His sister Amma adjusted her expensive head wrap in the hallway mirror. His brother Ika laughed at something Uncle Kwabena said. His mother Abina moved between the kitchen and dining room, carrying platters of jollof rice and grilled tilapia. The smell hit him like a memory he'd tried to forget. Kofi knocked. The laughter inside stopped. Amma opened the door, her smile freezing when she saw him. "Kofi?" "Hello, sister." She looked him up and down, taking in his faded shirt, his unshaven face, the single bag. Her smile didn't return. "I thought you were in Europe." "Working on that. What was it? Tech thing?" "It didn't work out," Kofi said. "Can I come in?" Amma glanced over her shoulder. Through the doorway, Kofi could see his other sister Akweshwa whispering urgently to her husband. "We're actually hosting some important people today," Amma said. "The minister's wife is coming for dinner. Maybe you could come back another time? Next week perhaps." "I've been traveling for 2 days, Amma. I just need. Next week would be better." She started closing the door. "I'll call you." The door clicked shut. Kofi stood there, staring at the painted wood. Inside, he heard Amma's voice, muffled but clear enough. "Can you believe he showed up looking like that? On today of all days." Kofi had known it might go this way. That was the point, wasn't it? But knowing and feeling were different things. His chest tightened as he turned away from the door. "Brother?" Kofi looked up. Ikau stood at the side of the house, wiping his hands on a rag. His younger brother had aged, grey touched his temples now, and work had thickened his shoulders. But his eyes were the same. Warm. Concerned. "Ikau." "I heard voices." "Was that you at the door?" Ikau walked closer, his brow furrowing as he took in Kofi's appearance. "Man, what happened? You look like hell." "I know." Kofi tried to smile. "Things fell apart, Ikau. The business, the investments, everything. I lost it all." Ikau's expression shifted through surprise, concern, and finally settled on something Kofi couldn't quite read. "Come here." He pulled Kofi into a tight embrace. "You should have called. You should have told us. Would it have mattered?" Ikau pulled back, gripping Kofi's shoulders. "It matters to me. Come on. You're staying with me." Relief flooded through Kofi, so genuine it surprised him. This was his brother. This was Ikau, who used to share his school lunch when Kofi forgot his, who took beatings meant for Kofi when they were kids. "I don't want to be a burden." "Shut up with that burden talk. Your family." Ikau grabbed Kofi's bag. "I've got a place above my shop. It's not fancy, but it's clean. You can stay as long as you need." As they walked away from the family compound, Kofi glanced back once. Through the window, he saw Amma and Akoshwa watching them leave. Neither came to the door. The apartment above Ikau's auto repair shop smelled like motor oil and the spicy pepper soup from the chop bar next door. One bedroom, a cramped bathroom, a kitchen that was really just a hot plate and a sink. Ikau cleared old newspapers from a worn couch. "It's not much," Ikau said. "It's perfect." Kofi set his bag down. Through the window, he could see the shop below, 3 car bays, tools hanging on pegboards, a small office in the corner. "Business looks good. We survive. Nothing like what you were doing, building those tech companies in Nairobi and all that." Ikau opened the small refrigerator. "Beer? Please." They sat on the couch, bottles sweating in their hands. Ikau studied his brother's face. "You want to talk about it? What happened?" Kofi had prepared this story, rehearsed it during the long bus ride from Nairobi. "Bad investments. I trusted the wrong partners. They drained the accounts and disappeared. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. The lawyers say I might face charges for debts I can't pay. Jesus, Kofi. I know. Kofi took a long drink. 15 years building something, and it's just gone. Ika was quiet for a moment. What about the family? Did you try reaching out before you came? I called Amma last month. Told her things were difficult. She said she'd pray for me and hung up. This part was true. Kofi had made that call as the first test. Tried Akojwa too. She was busy. Always busy. They've changed, Ikao said softly. Money changed them. Status changed them. Amma married that banker, now she thinks she's royalty. Akojwa's husband is running for local office, so everything is about appearances. He shook his head. I stopped going to family dinners months ago. Couldn't stand the phoniness. But you stayed, Kofi said. You stayed in Accra. Stayed close to home. Someone had to. Ika's voice carried something Kofi couldn't quite identify. Resentment? Pride? When Papa died, I was the one who handled everything. The funeral, settling his affairs, taking care of Mama. You were in Nairobi. Amma was in Kumasi. Akoywa was too busy with her new husband. It was just me. Guilt twisted in Kofi's stomach. This part wasn't planned. I should have come back. You were building something. I understood. Ikao finished his beer. Look, you're here now. That's what matters. Tomorrow, you start working with me in the shop. I can't pay much, but you'll earn your keep. And we'll figure out the rest together. Like we used to. Ikao, no arguments. You're my brother. This is what family does. That night, lying on the couch with a thin blanket, Kofi stared at the ceiling. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. Encrypted messages from his assistant in Nairobi. The board meeting went well, the new contracts were signed, SafeNet Africa's stock had jumped another 12%. His company, his empire, was thriving. But here, in this small apartment above an auto shop, drinking cheap beer with his brother, Kofi had felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Connection. Simplicity. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, Ikao's love was real. He silenced his phone and closed his eyes. The next morning, Ikao woke him at 6. Come on. Cars don't fix themselves. The work was hard. Kofi's hands, soft from years of boardrooms and keyboards, blistered within hours. He crawled under vehicles, past tools he didn't know the names of, learned to read engine problems by sound and smell. Ikao was patient, explaining each task, correcting mistakes without judgment. By the end of the first week, Kofi's back ached and his fingernails were permanently stained with grease. But there was satisfaction in it too. In fixing something broken. In seeing immediate results from his labor. You're getting better, Ikao said one evening as they closed up the shop. Remember that Corolla this morning? You diagnosed that fuel pump issue faster than I would have. Kofi wiped his hands on a rag. I'm just following what you taught me. No, you've got instinct for it. Papa would be proud. Ikao locked the bay doors. Hey, there's a football match tonight. Some of the neighborhood guys play at the old school field. Want to come? I haven't played in years. Perfect. You'll fit right in with us old men. The field was more dirt than grass, the goals were made of scrap metal, and the ball had seen better days. But the game was fierce and joyful. Kofi ran until his lungs burned, laughed until his sides hurt. Afterward, they bought kebabs from a street vendor and ate sitting on the curb, sweat cooling in the evening air. This, Kofi said, gesturing at the street, the vendors, the people walking home from work, this is real life, isn't it? Ikao nodded. This is what matters. Not the fancy cars or big houses. Just this. People. Community. Family. For a moment, Kofi almost believed him. Almost forgot why he'd come back. Almost forgot the test. 3 weeks passed. Kofi settled into a rhythm, work, simple meals, conversations with Ikao that stretched into the night. They talked about their childhood, about their father's pharmacy, about dreams they'd once shared. Ikao never asked for money, never hinted at needing help. He simply offered brotherhood. But small things nagged at Kofi. Phone calls Ikao took outside, conversations that stopped when Kofi entered a room. The way Ikao sometimes disappeared in the evenings, claiming errands but returning hours later with no packages. One afternoon, while Ikao was meeting with a client, Kofi noticed a leather notebook in the truck they were working on. It had fallen between the seats, partially hidden. Kofi almost ignored it. Almost. But he'd come back for truth, hadn't he? That was the point of all this. He pulled out the notebook and opened it. The pages were filled with Ikao's handwriting. Names, addresses, property values. Maps of the neighborhood with houses circled. Notes in the margins, pressure point, health issues, isolated, no family support. Kofi's hand started to shake as he turned pages. There, in his brother's careful script, was a plan. A scheme. Operation Golden Sunset. The target was elderly homeowners in their childhood neighborhood. People who'd lived in their houses for decades, who'd raised families and built lives. The plan was systematic: identify vulnerable elders, pressure them to sell through intermediaries, offer far below market value, flip the properties to developers for millions. Kofi saw names he recognized. Auntie Jojo, who used to give them mangoes from her tree. Mr. Owusu, who taught them to fix bicycles. And there, at the top of the list, circled 3 times, the family compound. Their mother's home. His vision blurred. He flipped to the most recent entries. Phase 1 complete, trust established with K. He suspects nothing. Phase 2, utilize KS business connections to legitimize acquisitions once revealed. Note, KS networks in Nairobi could open doors to larger investors. His name alone carries weight. Kate Kofi. This whole time, Ikao's kindness, his brotherhood, his talks about what really matters, it was all strategy. Kofi heard footsteps outside the bay. He shoved the notebook back between the seats and grabbed a wrench, pretending to work on the brake line. His heart hammered against his ribs. "Hey, you almost done with that one?" Ikao called out cheerfully as he entered. "We've got another customer coming in 20 minutes. Kofi didn't turn around. He couldn't. If he looked at his brother right now, Ikao would see everything written on his face. "Almost finished," he managed. "Great. I'm going to grab us some lunch. Fufu and light soup, okay?" "Sure." He heard Ikao's footsteps retreat, heard the shop door close. Only then did Kofi let himself breathe. His hands were shaking so badly he had to set down the wrench before he dropped it. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of believing that maybe, just maybe, one person in his family loved him for who he was. 3 weeks of hope dissolving into ash in his mouth. Kofi pulled out his phone and photographed every page of that notebook. Then he carefully placed it back exactly as he'd found it. Evidence. He'd need evidence. That evening, they ate dinner together like they had every night. Ikao talked about a difficult repair job, complained about a supplier raising prices, asked Kofi's opinion on expanding the business. And Kofi played along, smiled at the right moments, offered suggestions he knew Ikao didn't really want. All while seeing the truth behind every word. "You seem quiet tonight," Ikao observed. "Everything okay?" "Just tired. The work is catching up with me." "You're doing great, though." "Really? Having you here has been," Ikao paused, choosing his words carefully. "It's been good. Like old times." "Like old times," Kofi echoed. The words tasted like metal. After Ikao went to bed, Kofi sat in the dark living room, scrolling through the photos on his phone. Each page was a small betrayal, but together they formed a picture of calculated exploitation. His brother wasn't just running a predatory scheme, he was planning to use Kofi as the face of it. The respectable businessman who'd give it legitimacy. A text buzzed from his assistant in Nairobi, bored, asking when you're returning. "Should I tell them another week?" Kofi typed back, "Tell them soon. Very soon." The next morning, Kofi went for a walk before work. he found himself outside Auntie Jojo's house, the small yellow building with the mango tree in front. She was sweeping her porch, moving slowly, her back bent with age. "Kofi Mensah? Is that really you?" She squinted at him. "I heard you were back. Heard you'd fallen on hard times. News travels fast. In this neighborhood? Always has." She leaned on her broom. "Your brother's been very kind to you, I hear. Giving you work, a place to stay." "He has." Auntie Jojo's expression shifted, became serious. "Can I tell you something? Because I knew your father, and I know you're a good boy." "Of course." She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Men have been coming around. Offering to buy houses. They seem nice at first, very polite, but they push hard. They told Mr. Owusu his house needed expensive repairs he couldn't afford, that he should sell before it became worthless. They told me my children would have a better inheritance if I sold now." She shook her head. "But the prices they offer? It's robbery." Kofi's stomach clenched. "Have you seen who these men work for?" "They won't say. They have business cards, but no company name. Just a phone number." She studied his face. "Your brother Iko has been meeting with them. I've seen them talking at the shop late at night. I don't want to speak ill, but I thought you should know." "Thank you, Auntie." She touched his arm. "Your father always said you had a good heart. Whatever trouble you're in, it won't last forever. But be careful who you trust. Even family can surprise you." Kofi walked back to the shop feeling sick. He'd known about Iko's scheme from the notebook, but hearing it confirmed, seeing the real damage being done to real people, people who'd watched him grow up, made it visceral. He found Iko in the office, on the phone. His brother's voice drifted through the open door. "No, don't pressure her yet. We need to be patient with that one. Yes, I know the timeline, but we do this right or we don't do it at all. Look, once I bring my brother fully on board, we'll have access to serious money. Real investors. Just give me another few weeks." Iko noticed Kofi in the doorway and quickly wrapped up the call. "Morning. Ready to work." "Who was that?" "Just a parts supplier. They're pushing for payment." Iko smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Nothing to worry about. They worked side by side all morning. Every casual touch, every shared joke, every "pass me that wrench," brother felt like a knife between Kofi's ribs. This was worse than Ama's rejection or Akoshwa's indifference. This was intimacy weaponized. This was betrayal wrapped in brotherhood. By lunch, Kofi had made his decision. "I need to talk to the family," he said. "All of them. Can you arrange a meeting?" Iko looked up from the engine he was working on. "A meeting? Why?" "I have something important to discuss. Something everyone needs to hear. Kofi, if this is about asking for money. It's not about money. Please. Just arrange it. Tomorrow evening if possible." Iko studied him for a long moment. "Okay. I'll make some calls." That evening, while Iko was in the shower, Kofi made his own calls. To his lawyer in Nairobi. To a contact in the local police. To a journalist who owed him a favor. He put pieces in place, carefully, quietly. If he was going to end this, he'd end it completely. The next day dragged. Every hour felt like 3. Kofi watched Iko make calls, heard him on the phone with Ama and Akoshwa, heard him leave a message for Uncle Kwabena. The family meeting was set for 7 p.m. at their mother's house. They weren't happy about it, Iko reported. Ama especially. "She thinks you're going to ask for money. Let her think that." "Are you sure about this?" "Because I can help you, Kofi. I have some savings." "I'm sure." At 6:30, they closed the shop and drove to the family compound. Kofi's hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped hours ago, replaced by cold clarity. He'd spent $2 billion building a company, but he'd never spent a single Sadie testing whether his family's love was real. Now he knew. Now they'd all know. The compound looked the same as it had 3 weeks ago, but everything felt different. Cars lined the drive, Emma's Mercedes, Akojwa's BMW, Uncle Kwabina's Land Rover. Through the windows, Kofi could see them gathered in the living room, talking amongst themselves. "You ready?" Iko asked. "More than ready." They walked in together. The conversation stopped. Amma sat in their father's old chair, her expensive jewelry catching the light. Akojwa perched on the sofa next to her husband, Daniel, whose political campaign posters Kofi had seen around the city. Uncle Kwabina stood by the window, drink in hand. And there, in the corner, sat their mother Abina, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. "Well," Amma said, "we're all here. What's so important?" Kofi reached into his bag and pulled out the leather notebook. He set it on the coffee table. "I found this in Iko's truck." Iko's face went pale. "That's private property." Operation Golden Sunset, Kofi read from the cover. "A plan to systematically defraud elderly residents of this neighborhood, including our own mother, of their homes and life savings." The room exploded. Amma stood up, Akojwa gasped, Uncle Kwabina moved closer to see. Only their mother remained still, watching. "That's not," Iko started. "Don't." Kofi's voice cut through the noise like glass. "Don't lie. I've read every page. I've photographed it all. I've seen the maps, the target lists, the pressure tactics." He turned to face his brother. "I've heard you on the phone making deals. I've talked to the neighbors you're trying to exploit." Iko's expression cycled through denial, anger, and finally settled on something desperate. "You don't understand the context." "The context?" "The context is that you saw me vulnerable and decided to use me. You offered brotherhood while planning to make me the front man for your fraud. That's not how it was." Page 17, Kofi said coldly. Phase 2, utilize KS business connections to legitimize acquisitions. K meaning me. You were going to use my reputation, my contacts, my name to give credibility to stealing from elderly people. From our neighbors. From Mama. All eyes turned to Iko. His face was red now, sweat beading on his forehead. "I gave you a place to stay. I gave you work. I helped you when no one else would. You saw an opportunity." Kofi's voice remained steady. "The moment I showed up bankrupt, you saw a way to use me. Every kindness was an investment. Every conversation was manipulation." Amma found her voice. "Iko, please tell me this isn't true." But Iko wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Kofi with something like hatred now. "You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I have investors. Yes, I've been working on property deals. But you," he pointed at Kofi, his hand shaking, "you disappeared for 15 years. 15 years while I stayed here, handling everything, taking care of everyone. You built your empire while I fixed cars. You made millions while I scraped by. So this is about money. It's about respect." Iko shouted. "It's about recognition. About finally having something of my own instead of always being Kofi's little brother. The brilliant one. The successful one. The one Mama was always so proud of. I never asked. You didn't have to ask. It was always there, hanging over everything. Kofi the golden child who escaped. And me? I was just Iko. The one who stayed. The one who wasn't special enough to leave." His voice broke. "So yes, when you showed up with nothing, I saw an opportunity. I saw a chance to finally be the successful one. To finally matter." The silence that followed was suffocating. Kofi felt something crack inside his chest, not surprise, but a deeper kind of pain. Because underneath the scheme, underneath the betrayal, was his brother's wound. A wound Kofi had never seen, never acknowledged. "Iko," Kofi started. "Don't." Iko grabbed his keys. "Don't try to make this okay. You came back here testing us, didn't you? Pretending to be broke to see who'd help you. Well, congratulations. You proved your point. We're all terrible. We all failed your test." He headed for the door, but stopped when their mother finally spoke. "Sit down, Ikao." Her voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. Ikao froze. "All of you, sit down," Abina said. She stood slowly, her small frame somehow filling the room. "This performance has gone on long enough." Kofi felt ice water run down his spine. Something in his mother's tone, in the way she looked at him, not surprised, not shocked, but almost expectant. "Mama," Amma said uncertainly. Abina walked to the center of the room, looking at each of her children in turn. When her eyes met Kofi's, he saw something there that made his carefully constructed plan dissolve like smoke. She knew. Somehow, she knew. "Kofi," Abina said softly, "did you really think your mother wouldn't recognize her own son's games?" The room tilted. "What?" "I've known about SafeNet Africa for 5 years, she said calmly. Grace Nkrumah's son works at your Nairobi office. She showed me an article about you in some business magazine. $2.3 billion. Very impressive." Kofi couldn't breathe. The words hit him like physical blows. 5 years. She'd known for 5 years and said nothing. "You knew." His voice came out strangled. "All this time, you knew." "Of course I knew." Abina moved to the chair Amma had vacated, settling into it like a queen taking her throne. "Did you think I wouldn't keep track of my own son? That I wouldn't have friends who'd tell me when you appeared in newspapers, in magazines, on television?" Amma stood abruptly. "Wait. Kofi isn't bankrupt." "Not even close," Abina said. "His company is worth billions. He owns properties in 5 countries. He's been featured in Forbes Africa, Tech Magazine, Bloomberg. He's one of the most successful technology entrepreneurs on the continent." She looked at Kofi with an expression he couldn't read. "And he came home in rags to test whether we loved him." The room erupted again. Akosha's husband stood, pointing at Kofi. "You lied to us? You manipulated us." "This is insane," Amma said, her voice rising. "You pretended to need help just to, what? Prove we're all horrible people." Uncle Kwabena laughed bitterly. "Well, you proved it, didn't you? We failed your little test." But Kofi barely heard them. He was staring at his mother, trying to understand. "If you knew, why didn't you say anything? Why did you let me?" "Because you needed to see it," Abina interrupted. "You needed to see what your suspicion creates. What your tests produce." "My suspicion?" "They rejected me at the door. Amma wouldn't let me in the house." "Because I told her you'd lost everything and were probably coming to beg for money," Abina said calmly. "I called her the day before you arrived. I suggested she might want to be careful, that you might put her in an awkward position in front of her important guests." Kofi felt the ground shifting beneath him. You told her to turn me away." "I created the conditions for your test," Abina said. "I wanted you to see the results of your distrust. When you expect betrayal, you create it. When you test love, you destroy it." Ikao, who'd been silent during this exchange, finally found his voice. "So you knew about my plans too? The properties? I knew you'd been meeting with developers. I knew you were looking at property deals in the neighborhood." Abina's gaze shifted to him. "I knew you saw your brother's return as an opportunity rather than a reunion. And I let it play out." "You let it play out?" Ika's voice cracked. "You knew I was planning to, and you just watched." "I watched you both destroy each other," Abina said. "Kofi with his tests, you with your schemes. 2 sons so consumed by their own pain they couldn't see past it." Kofi sank into a chair, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. Everything he'd planned, everything he'd orchestrated, his mother had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. "Why? Why would you do this?" Abina stood and walked to the mantel, where a photograph of their father sat in a simple frame. She picked it up, studying the image. "When your father died, I sold his pharmacy. Did any of you know that?" Silence. "I sold it for 50,000 cedis. A lifetime of work, reduced to a number. But I took that money, and I invested it in something I believed in." She turned to face Kofi. I gave it to a young man who had a dream about internet security. About protecting African businesses from cyber threats. He needed seed money to register his company, to buy his first servers, to hire his first employees. Kofi's vision blurred. Mama, no. Yes, she said firmly. That 50,000 cedis became SafeNet Africa's foundation. Your father's pharmacy became your empire. You were never self-made, my son. You were made by sacrifice you never even knew about. Why didn't you tell me? Kofi whispered. Because real love doesn't keep receipts, Abina said. Real love doesn't expect gratitude or recognition. It gives in silence and asks for nothing back. She set down the photograph. But you? You came back here keeping score. Who loves you enough? Who passes your tests? Who proves their loyalty? That's not love. That's business. Amma was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. So you let him think we were all horrible. You helped him believe his family didn't care about him. I let him see what his suspicion created, Abina corrected. I told you he was broke, but I didn't make you turn him away. That was your choice. I told Akoshwa he might be an embarrassment, but I didn't force her to avoid him. That was her decision. She looked at each of them. I simply gave you all the opportunity to show who you really are. That's cruel, Akoshwa said. Perhaps, Abina agreed. But sometimes the truth requires cruelty. Sometimes love must be harsh to be heard. Kofi felt like he was drowning. You orchestrated all of this. The rejection, I orchestrated the conditions, Abina interrupted. The rest was all of you. Your choices. Your priorities. Your values. She moved closer to him. Tell me, my son, what did you learn from your test? That your family is shallow? That we only love your money? Is that what you wanted to prove? I wanted to know if anyone cared about me. Kofi's voice broke. Just me. Not what I've built or what I can give them. Just me. And in searching for that answer, you ensured you'd never find it, Abina said softly. You can't test love without poisoning it. You can't demand proof without destroying trust. Every time you questioned, every time you doubted, you created the very thing you feared. Ikao stood suddenly, his face flushed. This is insane. You're both insane. Kofi with his tests, you with your lessons. Sit down, Abina commanded. When Ikao hesitated, she added, now. He Saturday. You want to talk about injustice? Abina turned to Ikao. You want to discuss being overlooked? Let me tell you about sacrifice. After your father died, I had nothing. No savings, no pension, no insurance beyond the money I gave to Kofi. I cleaned houses. I sold food at the market. I took in laundry. Do you know why? Ikao said nothing. Because I believed in my children. All of you. I believed that if I could just keep you fed, keep you in school, keep you alive, you would find your way. Kofi found his way to Nairobi and built something extraordinary. But you? She shook her head. You found your way to exploiting elderly people who trusted you. To planning fraud against your own neighbors. Against your own family. I was trying to build something. You were trying to steal something, Abina corrected sharply. There's a difference. Building requires creation. What you planned was destruction dressed up as opportunity. She leaned forward. But here's what you need to understand, Ikao. Your pain is real. Your feeling of being overlooked is valid. But using that pain to justify hurting others? That's where you failed. That's where you became something your father would be ashamed of. The words landed like hammer blows. Ikao's face crumpled. I just wanted to matter. I just wanted someone to see me as more than Kofi's brother. I saw you, Abina said. I always saw you. When Kofi left, who stayed? Who helped me through my grief? Who called every week to check on me? Who fixed my roof when it leaked? Who brought me food when I was sick? Who made sure I wasn't alone? Her voice softened. That was you, Ikao. That was always you. You mattered more than you could ever know. But you were so busy comparing yourself to Kofi that you couldn't see your own value. Something broke in the room. Kofi watched his brother's shoulders shake with silent sobs. Watched Amma cover her face with her hands. Watched Akosua lean against her husband, suddenly small. All of you, Abina said, her voice carrying across the space, have been living in comparison. Measuring yourselves against each other instead of seeing your own worth. Keeping score instead of giving freely. Testing instead of trusting. She looked at Kofi. And you, my brilliant son, came back here not to reconnect, but to confirm your worst fears. You wanted to believe we didn't love you. Because if we didn't love you, then being alone was justified. Expected. Safe. That's not, Kofi started, but the words died. Because it was true. All of it was true. He'd spent 15 years building walls disguised as success. Distance disguised as ambition. And when the loneliness became unbearable, instead of reaching out in vulnerability, he devised a test. A way to prove that connection was impossible. That trust was foolish. That love was always conditional. I was wrong, Kofi whispered. Yes, Abina agreed. But so were they. So was Iko with his schemes. So were your sisters with their priorities. So was I with my manipulation. She sat down again, suddenly looking every one of her 68 years. We've all been wrong. We've all hurt each other. The question is, what do we do now? Uncle Kwabena cleared his throat. I should probably mention that I actually could have helped you, Kofi. That first day. I had money saved. I assumed you wanted more than I could give. I assumed you'd judge me for not offering enough. I wouldn't have. But I assumed, Kwabena interrupted. Just like you assumed we only wanted your money. Assumptions. Tests. Fears. We've built an entire family on them. Amma wiped her eyes. I didn't let you in because I was ashamed. Not of you or of myself. I've been living beyond my means for years, trying to maintain an image I can't afford. When I saw you at the door, looking poor, I saw myself. What I'm terrified of becoming. The minister's wife wasn't even coming, Akosua added quietly. I made that up. I didn't want you to see our house, see how we're struggling. Daniel's campaign has drained our savings. We're barely holding on. But I couldn't let anyone know that. Especially not you. The confessions kept coming, each one peeling back layers of pretense. They'd all been performing. All hiding. All so terrified of being seen as failures that they'd pushed each other away. Do you see now? Abina asked Kofi. Your test revealed nothing but fear. Not lack of love, fear. Fear of judgment, fear of inadequacy, fear of vulnerability. You created a scenario where everyone's worst selves came forward, then claimed it proved they never loved you. Kofi felt something shifting in his chest. The anger that had sustained him, the righteous hurt, it was dissolving, replaced by something more complex. More painful. Because his mother was right. He'd engineered his own loneliness. What about you? He asked her. You funded my company in secret, watched all this happen, manipulated everyone. Was that love? Abina was quiet for a long moment. It was the best version of love I knew how to give. Was it perfect? No. Was it kind? Not always. But it was real. She met his eyes. I wanted you to succeed more than I wanted you to know I'd helped. That's sacrifice. But I also wanted you to learn this lesson more than I wanted you to feel good. That's tough love. Both can be true. If you've made it this far in this story, consider subscribing to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories about family, loyalty, and the complicated nature of love. And comment below, have you ever tested someone's loyalty? How did it turn out? Let's talk about it. So what now? Iko asked. His voice was raw. Kofi knows I tried to use him. Everyone knows I'm running a predatory scheme. The police are probably already involved. Kofi looked at his brother, really looked at him. At the grey in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the weight of years on his shoulders. This was the boy who used to share his lunch. Who'd taken beatings for him? Who'd stayed when staying was the harder choice? The police aren't involved, Kofi said quietly. Yet.
Ikao's head snapped up. What? I made calls. Put things in motion. But I haven't filed anything official. Kofi pulled out his phone, scrolled through messages. I can still stop it. If I want to. Why would you? Ikao's voice was hollow. I deserve whatever's coming. Maybe, Kofi agreed. But I'm not interested in punishment. I'm interested in truth. He set his phone on the table. The scheme ends today. You contact every person you've approached, every investor you've recruited, and you tell them it's over. You make it right with the neighbors. Whatever deposits you've taken, you return them. I don't have that kind of money. I do, Kofi interrupted. I'll cover the returns. But you do the work. You face every person you tried to exploit and you apologize. You own what you did. Ikao stared at him. You'd do that? After everything? I'd do that because you're my brother. Because underneath the scheme and the betrayal, there's a person who stayed when I left. Who took care of Mama when I was building my empire. Who offered me shelter when he thought I had nothing. Kofi's throat tightened. I came here to test your love. I didn't expect to find my own failure staring back at me. Amma stood and walked to the window. Her expensive jewelry caught the lamplight, but suddenly it looked cheap. Costume. I don't know how to fix this, she said. I don't know how to stop being the person who turned her brother away at the door. You start by being honest, Abina said. With yourself. With each other. No more pretending. No more performing. I'm broke, Amma said simply. The words seemed to cost her everything. My marriage is falling apart. My husband gambles. We're drowning in debt. But I couldn't let anyone know because I've spent years telling everyone how successful we are. She turned to face them. I'm ashamed. Of my choices. Of my pride. Of who I've become. Akojua reached for her sister's hand. Daniel's campaign is destroying us. Every day it's more money we don't have for advertisements, for events, for bribes we're told are necessary. I wanted to ask for help so many times, but I couldn't. Because asking meant admitting we weren't the perfect couple everyone thinks we are. The dam had broken. Uncle Kwabena talked about his failing business, his fear of losing everything. Akojua's husband Daniel confessed that he'd only run for office because his family expected it, not because he wanted to. Each confession stripped away another layer of pretense until they were all standing there, exposed and raw. This is what I wanted, Abina said softly. Not the pain. Not the betrayal. But this, the truth. The honesty. The vulnerability. This is where family begins. Kofi felt tears on his face but didn't wipe them away. I left 15 years ago because I was afraid, he said. Afraid I'd fail. Afraid I'd be trapped here forever. Afraid I'd disappoint you all if you knew how scared I was. He looked at his mother. I built SafeNet Africa because I wanted to prove I was worth something. That I mattered. That leaving wasn't a mistake. You always mattered, Abina said. Success didn't make you matter. You mattered because you were mine. Because you were ours. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that. I did, Kofi agreed. And then I had everything I'd worked for, and I was more alone than I'd ever been. So I convinced myself it was your fault. That you only wanted my money. That none of it was real. He laughed bitterly. I tested you to prove you didn't love me. And when you failed my rig test, I could justify my isolation. Ikao was still crying, but he managed to speak. I'm sorry. For all of it. For seeing you as an opportunity instead of my brother. For planning to use you. For, his voice broke. For being the person who confirmed your worst fears. I'm sorry too, Kofi said. For leaving and not looking back. For building walls and calling them boundaries. For testing your love instead of trusting it. They sat in silence for a long moment. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, night sounds drifted through the windows, crickets, distant music, someone calling their children home. Finally, Amma spoke. So what happens now? Do we all just pretend this didn't happen? Go back to our lives? No, Abina said firmly. You can't unknow what you've learned tonight. You can't unsee what you've seen. The question is whether you'll let this destroy you or rebuild you. How do we rebuild? Akojua asked. Where do we even start? Kofi stood and walked to his bag. He pulled out a folder he'd brought, thick with documents. I came here tonight planning to expose Akau's scheme. To cut ties with all of you. To prove that I was right to stay away. He set the folder on the table. These are the papers I was going to present. Evidence. Legal documents. Everything needed to burn it all down. Ikau flinched. But Mama's right, Kofi continued. Testing love destroys it. Keeping score kills it. Demanding proof poisons it. He picked up the folder and walked to the fireplace. Their father's old lighter sat on the mantel. Kofi picked it up, flicked it open. I don't want to be the person who measures love in evidence and proof. He set the folder on fire. The papers caught quickly, flames eating through all his carefully gathered evidence. Photographs of the notebook pages. Documented phone calls. Financial records. Everything that would have proven his point burned away to ash. Kofi, what are you doing? Ikau asked. I'm choosing trust over proof, Kofi said, watching the flames. I'm choosing vulnerability over protection. I'm choosing to believe that people can change, that families can heal, that love is possible even after betrayal. He looked at his brother. But I need you to meet me there. I need you to actually end the scheme. To make it right. To be the person I remember instead of the person you became. Ikau nodded, unable to speak. Amma stood and joined Kofi by the fireplace. I need to tell my husband the truth. About the debt. About everything. Even if it ends my marriage. I need to pull Daniel out of the race, Akojua added. Before it destroys us completely. Uncle Kwabena cleared his throat. I need to admit my business is failing and ask for help instead of pretending everything is fine. One by one, they made their commitments. Small steps toward honesty. Toward change. Toward becoming people they could respect. Abina watched them all with an expression that was equal parts pain and pride. There's one more thing you all need to understand, she said. Love isn't what you thought it was. It's not grand gestures or perfect moments. It's showing up. It's staying. It's telling the truth even when it costs you. It's sacrifice without expectation of return. Like selling Papa's pharmacy, Kofi said quietly. Like that, Abina agreed. But also like Ikau staying when you left. Like Amma checking on me every week even when she was drowning in her own problems. Like Akojua bringing me food even when she couldn't afford it. Like Uncle Kwabena fixing my car for free when his own business was failing. She looked at each of them. You've all loved each other. Imperfectly. Messily. But you've loved. You just couldn't see it through all your fear and pride. Kofi felt something loosening in his chest. A knot he'd been carrying for 15 years, slowly unraveling. I've been so angry, he whispered. For so long. I know, Abina said. Anger is easier than grief. Resentment is safer than vulnerability. Testing is simpler than trusting. But easier and safer and simpler don't make you whole. They just make you alone. The words landed like benediction. Like release. I don't want to be alone anymore, Kofi said. Then stop building walls, his mother replied. Stop testing. Stop keeping score. Just love. Imperfectly. Messily. But honestly. They talked into the night. Sometimes the conversation was painful, old wounds reopening, new hurts being acknowledged. But there was also laughter. Stories from childhood. Memories of their father. Moments of connection that felt like coming home. Around midnight, Ekau pulled Kofi aside. I meant what I said. I'll end it. All of it. The scheme, the investors, everything. And I'll make it right with the neighbors. I know, Kofi said. How do you know? After everything, how can you trust me? Kofi thought about the notebook, about the betrayal, about all the reasons not to trust. Then he thought about his mother's words. About choosing vulnerability over protection. Because trust isn't about certainty. It's about choice. I choose to believe you'll do the right thing. And if you don't, we'll deal with it then. But I won't live in constant suspicion anymore. It's killing me. Ekau pulled him into a fierce embrace. I won't let you down. Not again. We've all let each other down, Kofi said. The question is whether we'll let that define us or refine us. Before Kofi left that night, his mother took him aside. They stood in the kitchen where she used to make breakfast before school, where she taught him to cook, where so many family moments had unfolded. You came back to test us, Abina said. But I think you were really testing yourself. Testing whether you were capable of being loved. Whether you deserved it. Maybe, Kofi admitted. You do, she said firmly. Not because of what you've built or what you've achieved. You deserve love because you exist. Because you're mine. Because you matter. The sooner you believe that, the sooner you can actually receive what people are trying to give you. Even after everything tonight, after all the manipulation, you still think love is possible? I know it is, Abina said. Because I'm looking at it right now. You could have destroyed Ekau tonight. You could have cut us all off. You could have used your evidence to prove you were right. But you didn't. You chose mercy. That's love, my son. Imperfect, complicated, messy love. But love nonetheless. 3 months later, Kofi sat in a small office in Kumasi. Not his corporate headquarters. Not his Nairobi penthouse. A simple space where he met weekly with young entrepreneurs, offering mentorship and seed funding. No strings attached. No expectations of return. His phone buzzed. A message from Ekau, met with Mr. Owusu today. Returned his deposit. He cried. I cried. This is harder than I thought. Kofi smiled and typed back, doing the right thing usually is. Proud of you. Another message, this time from Amma, told my husband everything. We're in counseling. It's rough, but we're trying. Thank you for showing me that honesty is possible. Akojua had sent a picture earlier that morning, Daniel withdrawing from the political race, both of them looking relieved. His mother called every Sunday. They talked about small things mostly. The weather. The neighbors. What she was cooking for dinner. But underneath it all was a new foundation. Honesty. Trust. The willingness to be vulnerable. SafeNet Africa was still thriving. Kofi still flew to Nairobi for board meetings, still made business decisions worth millions. But he'd also started giving away his wealth in ways that mattered. Funding schools. Building clinics. Supporting small businesses. Not for recognition or tax benefits or legacy. Just because he could. Because abundance was meant to be shared, not hoarded. A young woman knocked on his door. Mr. Mensah? I'm here for the 3 o'clock meeting about my app idea. Kofi gestured to the chair across from him. Tell me about it. And please, call me Kofi. As she explained her vision, a platform connecting rural farmers with urban markets, Kofi thought about his own journey. The tests he'd constructed. The walls he'd built. The ways he'd sabotaged his own connection in the name of protecting himself. His mother was right. You can't test love without poisoning it. You can't demand proof without destroying trust. Real love requires vulnerability. Risk. The possibility of being hurt. But the alternative, isolation disguised as safety, was its own kind of death. This is brilliant, he told the young woman. Let me introduce you to some people. And let's talk about funding. Her eyes widened. Really? Just like that? Just like that, Kofi said. Sometimes people need someone to believe in them before they can believe in themselves. Someone gave me that gift once. I'm just passing it forward. That evening, Kofi drove back to Accra. He pulled up to the family compound just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Through the window, he could see them gathered for Sunday dinner. Ama and her husband. Akojua and Daniel. Uncle Kwabena. Ikao. And at the head of the table, his mother. They weren't perfect. Their problems hadn't magically disappeared. Alma's marriage was still fragile. Akojua was still figuring out life after politics. Ikao was still working to make amends with the community. They were all still healing. Still learning. Still trying. But they were together. Honest. Real. Kofi got out of the car and walked to the door. This time, he didn't knock. He just opened it and walked in. Kofi, his mother called out. We saved you a plate. He sat down at the table, surrounded by his family. Imperfect. Flawed. Human. But his. And for the first time in 15 years, Kofi Mensah felt like he'd finally come home. Before we end, if you found this story meaningful, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Family is complicated, love is messy, but connection is worth fighting for. Drop a comment telling us about your own family journey, the good, the bad, and the complicated. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that explore the depths of human relationships. Thank you for watching until the end. Until next time, remember that true wealth isn't what you accumulate, but what you're willing to give away. And true family isn't perfect, it's real. The story of Kofi Mensah wasn't about a test that revealed truth. It was about a test that revealed the danger of testing at all. About how suspicion creates betrayal. How fear manufactures the very thing it fears. How walls built for protection become prisons. But it was also about redemption. About second chances. About the courage to choose vulnerability over certainty. About families that break and, with work and honesty and grace, learn to heal. In the end, Kofi learned what his mother had been trying to teach him all along. Love isn't something you test. It's something you trust. Not blindly. Not foolishly. But courageously. With eyes open to the possibility of both pain and beauty. Both failure and grace. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is choosing to believe in people's capacity to change, even after they've hurt you. Especially then. That's the real test. Not of their love, but of yours.